Hello, and welcome to Thingness.
This podcast is one part of our domestic microgallery. In each of these episodes, we sit down with our current exhibitor and talk about objects, things, and collecting in relation to exhibiting outside of white cube norms. We are Hannah
And Martin, and today we are joined by Dorota Dziong. Would you like to tell us where you're from and a little bit about your practice?
Hello. Thank you for having me. So I'm currently in Bergen, having graduated from KMD with an MFA just this June. But originally from Poland and then from Canada, so Polish Canadian, and now based in Bergen.
You got a nice range of different backgrounds.
Yes, I've said in the past that I identify more as an immigrant than a national of any particular country.
And your practice is extended for quite a long period of time. You did your bachelor's, when was that?
It was I graduated in 1999.
So you've been through a few different things, and more recently your practice has come more towards animation, correct? It's like you had more of a base in painting, and installation, and
for sure. So just I guess the last 2 years being here, it really expanded into being more interdisciplinary, almost like beyond even animation. I thought coming in I was a painter, but I definitely, based on the subject matter and the way I was painting and the way it was evolving, I knew I wanted to look into animation. But I didn't expect for that to expand into also like live action video and installation and like more sculptural work. But I would say in the world of installation right now, more than standalone sculptures. But so very much interdisciplinary at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It's been really fun to watch actually your progress the last 2 years. We were in the same course together, so seeing this development has been very exciting. So it's lovely to have you here with us in Thingness. So we always start by asking our guests if they could describe their relationships to things, objects, and collecting. So I don't know how you want to start, which bit you want to pick up on, but how do you kind of take that question?
I mean, it's interesting that we talked a little bit, because I know it kind of relates to collecting the project and the way it's shaped with this little shelf, and but definitely objects and collecting in a certain sense, but maybe less collecting than kind of, I'd say, accumulating things. Like that's been very much that's a very big part of what I kind of, I guess, investigate in my work. And I think it comes from like just a very just an interest in the relationship we have to our objects and how we accumulate and how we feel burdened by them, but then we also put a lot of emotional value and sentimental value, and it's all very interesting. And I think it's also related to, then it relates to kind of socioeconomic issues about like owning things and accumulating things, and also to being in, like, having migrated kind of in my life, and migrated like, I guess, countries, but also
collecting passports.
Collecting passports, I guess, yes. But also, I would say, living in Toronto and kind of how vulnerable artists are in terms of just having space and having to like, I've had to move studios so much in the recent years because of the real estate situation in Toronto. So then you end up getting very burdened with objects. Sorry, I keep going. I'm going on and on, but
it's, I think we definitely relate to that in Sweden, in the way that works with the kind of rental agency. In a way, you end up having to move kind of most likely once a year.
Right.
And I think the two of us definitely have experienced this, every time it comes around to moving, you suddenly question and look at everything that you own, and you go through like a little, do I need it, do I not?
Marie Kondo thing.
How much does it bring me? And it's funny in a way to, I reflect onto how my parents live in this house that they've lived in for decades, and they don't look at each object they own with that kind of same questioning that I think as artists we have to, or not just artists, but people who have to move a lot, or I don't know, aware of what they own in a way.
Absolutely. I think I was thinking of that. If you it is a very different relationship to like and sentimental objects and when you're when you can be in one place for a long time and not move, but when you have to move a lot. And as you know, like in my last year has been like under the underlying kind of thing in my life has been the fact that my mom passed away suddenly, and we had to deal with the objects that she she collected, and then what do you keep, but then I have this fear of because if I do keep too much, then it's so sentimental, then I can't let them go. But if I have to, so I find it very interesting. I mean, it's like this tormented relationship, but I also love nesting. I love I love my books, I love my mugs, I love ceramics, I love having a nice place, and so. Yeah.
And your studio is also a very interesting place. I mean, coming into the studio in the last couple of years, the amount that has kind of how it's grown, because in a way, we all moved, a lot of us moved here to start the masters, and we started with nothing in a way.
Yeah.
And suddenly the studio built up and built up as we created work. But the amount of different objects and things that are in your studio, it's so much fun to come in and just like see all these weird different materials and shapes and forms and you just had to move that studio.
Yep.
I mean, that is like a kind of like dichotomy, I suppose. This like semi-nomadic artist life where you want to be like light on your feet, but then, for example, like when you're in stop motion animation, where having more material to work with, like brings momentum.
Absolutely.
And movement to the work itself, which is like they're kind of like in opposition.
Yeah, the clashes. Yeah.
I mean, stop motion for sure. Like starting to work with stop motion animation has made me like anything I look at is like can become a character or a set or something. Like every object I'm looking at now can be like an interesting thing to keep and use. So so then you start accumulating again. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's take that then as a move on, because I know that what we have in Thingness started as an object that you collected to use for animation. So do you want to introduce what it is that you've installed and maybe a little bit of the background to it?
Yes. So what I installed was what I installed was they're basically stuffed. They're fingers of stuffed vinyl gloves. And they're stuffed with just synthetic.
They're the see-through ones, not the colored ones.
They're the see-through ones, yes. So they're quite white, and then there is like an elements of a few elements from actual characters from. I guess the gloves were also characters in stop motion animation, but I also made some like stuffed puppets, kind of, and like figures. So there are a couple of eyes and some painted fingers in there as well, but predominantly it's the stuffed vinyl fingers that I've accumulated over the past 2 years, and I've used in a bunch of my stop motion animations. And I've been wanting to do something. I don't know. To be honest, like I'm trying to think like, well, what is the fascination? But I do use a lot of like this disembodied body parts kind of appear in my work. So I think the gloves also I'm trying to think back actually, where did I start with the gloves? But there was like, I used it as a head for a character. I used them as like, when you multiply it, right? When you have something and you multiply it, it changes meaning. When you see it on a different scale, it changes the meaning. So they've been really kind of, they've been around a lot. And I really wanted to use them kind of in this very like stuff something with them. And this was like a perfect opportunity, the size of this. And it's like, so I thought this is perfect. And also because it kind of brackets a certain period, like we just graduated, where like the gallery is moving on to a different geographical location. So it seemed like it seemed to make sense to me.
Like, I guess like visually and thematically, it's two different things, but like, these sort of like disembodied body parts and like collecting, it's like a somewhat of like a macabre like reference, but that you have this like I'm just thinking of this like sort of string of ears.
Yeah.
This like scalp hunter.
String of ears.
Yeah, this was like back in the day of like the Wild West, when like it's like very rough individuals would be tasked with like hunting down and like killing Indians, and like the way they would collect payment within like in a weird twist of like, you know, the Indian taking scalp, they would cut off ears.
No.
Or like scalps or whatever.
Well, and then they would like have a string of them on like their horse or something.
Or just around the neck when they would be like the safe. So they're like a collecting.
That's horrible.
Yeah, super horrible. But this is like, hey, you're collecting fingers.
Yeah. I guess you could like, because also like, you know, kidnappings. I guess I never thought of that. But
Oh,
when you're talking
that's
about
a good
when you
one.
send a kind of finger to, I guess so. I guess
That's so much money right there.
As a kind of morbid approach to. It's funny. I think I just immediately started to think of them as, I don't know. I'm very much into forms and lines and shapes, and so I just started to look at all the different lines where like the creases started to come together, and like. I when you put it up, I said there was a really nice movement of, you know, there's some fingers pointing up and down and to the sides. It's like there's this really nice kind of swirling motion that gets created.
It's a very soft motion.
Yeah. And so it's like your eye gets drawn, and even though in a way they are all the same, it doesn't. There's still so much to look at. Like it becomes, I guess, in a way, what's interesting about this installation is that. In our previous exhibitions, it's lots of smaller objects and you take each one in individually. This, I feel like it's like it becomes like the whole shelf now has become an object. Like you've created an object out of multiple things in a way, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, visually, like the closest like reference in nature I can think of is maybe like one of these like anemones,
anemones
in like coral reefs. You know, they kind of like moves with the current, or you know,
that's true.
Kind of look like a little bit like.
And I totally, because another thing that I kind of wanted to do with these is I took close-ups, like when I had, because part of a previous installation, right at Bergen had the actual vinyl gloves installed, kind of on the
you
with the fingers poining up
alongside the animation.
Yes. And then I took a close-up of those from the top, and I wanted to print photographs, like blow them up to like change the scale completely. And it did. Like when you look at them, I never had a chance to actually. I haven't done it so far, but when you look at the actual image, it does make me think. It's like it transforms this object so dramatically, and it makes you think of like a sea, some sort of sea growth. So this is what, like, something that's overgrowing. Like when I was thinking of stuffing, I don't know, something else, a bookcase with them, I was like, it was this idea of making these like human-made, mass-produced objects become something that seems maybe more organic and that's taking over and growing out of it. So I think this kind of has that effect as well.
Yeah.
It's funny in a way because it's making me think, Martin, you just had a show recently which was about this, like thinking about what the earth might look like in hundreds of years when we're no longer here and it's just all the decay of like plastic and stuff that remains.
Or what are like, you know, sort of geological layer.
Yeah. And I'm imagining like, you know, instead of there being any humans around, there's being all these remains of like, like gloves or like, you know, other things that in a way reference the body, but the body is no longer there within it, like the masks or like certain, you know, these suits, these what they call like the
hazmats.
Or like wellies, these things that are kind of plastic that don't really break down, that like that get left and
they're shaped like
it's like there's bodies humans but there's not. It's funny because you look at the fingers and it's definitely fingers, but yeah, I think I'm thinking again about the fact that they're gloves, but they're not being used for gloves. It's like, and especially because, you know, you've cut all the fingers off, so it's not like it's actual glove stuffed in there. It's just the individual fingers.
Yeah.
And then the eyes peeking out, the little creature within.
Not just feelers.
Not just feelers, no. So, at the end, we always ask our guests if they have any references they would like to add to the bibliography.
Yeah, so I thought of a couple of things, and one I kind of often bring up is Jan Svankmajer. Like he's something like anyone would enjoy. He's still alive, but he's quite old at this. He's a Czech director, filmmaker, but stop motion. He was like an basically surrealist, absurdist stop motion maker, and amazing. Just look him up on YouTube. And the other is Janet Cardiff and George Miller. I
like they're fantastic.
Yeah, and me kind of having lived in Canada for so long, so they're like and they're Canadians, so that's they've been like I had a chance to see a bunch of their installations in person throughout the years, and the two kind of that came to mind was The Dark Pool, and another one was Opera for a Small Room. So I think they're quite relevant for me because they're installations with sound, and also for this idea of collecting, because there's a lot of objects and they create this space where like you think you feel the presence of someone. There is no human being, but you can tell there was someone or will be. Anyways, they're inhabited in some way.
That's funny. I don't know the installations. I know Janet Cardiff more for her walks. Yeah, the sound walks. I've not seen her.
Yeah.
We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, they're really good.
Nice.
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was Thingness.